Hello everyone. To prepare for working on our first level, I just want to take all of my blend files and make sure that each one has their own scene that I can then start putting together for actual levels. So I'm going to start by focusing on the ground and just Command N to make a new scene. The ground isn't something that moves, so it's going to be a static body. So plus other node, I can start typing static body and then choose that right there. I'm going to rename that descriptively, and I'm going to drag the blend file over that location. All right, so my blend file is in place. Now, if I try to make a collider using one of the default collision shapes, because I have these hills, none of them are going to fit really well. So I want to use one of probably the Trimesh option, but we'll see what ends up working best. Now, to have access to the additional options that fit your mesh really well, you need to just right click, enable Editable Children, and then when you click on the mesh object, so my plane in this case, then I have this new mesh button that shows up over here, and it's only available when a mesh is selected. So from here, I can create a collision shape. I want to leave it as a sibling. I could also do it as a child, but that's not going to be super helpful in this case. So I'm going to leave it as a sibling, and you can see we have a bunch of different options. I'm going to go through all of them so you can see the difference. So I'll start with the single convex, and I'm going to create it. And notice if we hide the plane, it doesn't actually fit the ground super well. Now, in some cases, this isn't going to be a problem and it's less processing, so it might be a really good choice. In this case, though, I want my player to actually be able to go up and down those hills and actually follow the geometry of the mesh. So this isn't going to be a great option. So I'm just going to undo with Command Z a couple of times. And there we go. So I'm going to try this again. Create collision mesh. This time, let's do the simplified convex. So I've created that. And if we hide my plane, you can see that it's really not fitting well enough. Again, it's less geometry, so depending on what the object is and how accurate the interaction needs to be, it might actually be a great choice, but not for our ground here. So I'm going to undo and get rid of that. All right, so next up, we have multiple convex, and this one looks like it's following the shapes a little bit better, but you can still see that it doesn't actually fit properly. So I'm still not going to be using this in this case. So just going to go back. So this time I'm going to go with Trimesh. Trimesh is the heaviest processing, but it fits absolutely perfectly. So only use Trimesh when you need a really perfect fit because of how the player is going to be interacting with the object. Now, something important to know about Trimesh is you should only be using it on static bodies that are not actually moving. If you try to apply it to something that's moving, your collisions probably aren't going to behave the way that you actually need them to. Now, you'll notice we still have the warning about the collision shape, and that's just because the location is wrong. I don't actually want it to be a sibling. I want it to be a child of the ground. So there we go. Now, no warnings. That mesh is fitting absolutely perfectly. Now, before I move on, I do want to mention, just have my static body node selected here. I'm going to expand the collision settings. We have different collision layers that we can work with in Godot. So when you go to project settings, and you can see I was looking over here earlier, but in the general tab, we have layer names specifically for 3D physics. And so we have different layers that we can be working with here. And so generally speaking, I'm going to want a layer for things that are part of the world. I'm going to want a layer specifically for my player. If I have enemies, I might have a layer for that. If I have collectibles, I might have a layer for that. You can have a large number of layers depending on what you want going on, but this just controls what can actually work with what. And so I'm going to close out of here, and my world is layer 1 and my player is layer 2. So this is the actual layer that it's working on. So I'm saying that this is part of my world, and the mask is what can interact with it. So things that are part of the world can interact, and I also want my player to be able to interact over here. I am going to want to go back over to my player object and make sure that this is set up properly. So my player is actually layer 2, so I want this to be layer 2, not layer 1, and it's masking layer 1 so it can interact with the world. All right, so that is it for the setup of my ground. So at this point, I'm going to want to save my scene. So just Command S. I'm going to create a new folder for any scenes that might be shared across multiple levels. So I can come over to the new folder icon, shared, okay, and then I can save that file in that location. And I also just want to make sure that my player scene saves as well. All right, so that is it for the ground.